stop and podcast title, The Deep Dive, Jaromír Jágr's Unbreakable Records and 38-Year Hockey Legacy, Apple Podcasts description. Join us on this deep dive as we explore the astounding NHL career and global legacy of Jaromír Jágr, the legendary Czech ice hockey player who has defied age to play an unprecedented 38 professional seasons. Drawing from comprehensive biographical records up to October 2025, we unpack how a kid from Rytíši Kladno won back-to-back Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins, became the second highest point scorer in NHL history behind Wayne Gretzky, and officially surpassed Gordie Howe's professional hockey longevity records. Discover the profound geopolitical meaning behind his iconic number 68, the unique ways he adapted to North America, and the selfless, heartbreaking reason he refuses to hang up his skates at age 53. Whether you are a die-hard sports fan tracking NHL history or simply fascinated by the ultimate story of athletic dedication and human endurance, this deep dive will leave you rethinking what is physically and mentally possible. Apple Podcast description. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading to the ice. Yeah, definitely a cold one today.
Right. And we are looking at what is definitively the longest playing career in professional ice hockey history. We've got this really comprehensive, fully updated profile of Jaromír Jágr in front of us. And it brings us all the way through the start of his 38th professional season.
Which is just, it's hard to even say out loud, 38 seasons.
He's a wild. That started in October 2025. And for you listening, I really want you to let that timeline sink in for a second. Imagine starting your career in 1988. A completely different world back then.
Exactly. Now imagine showing up to do the exact same grueling, really physically punishing job 38 years later.
Yeah.
At 53 years old, Jaromír Jágr isn't just a hockey player anymore. I mean, he's a living, breathing time capsule of the sport.
It genuinely defies conventional logic. We are talking about a highly physical, high-impact sport where players routinely age out. Or they just get battered into forced retirement by their early 30s.
Yeah, your knees just give out. Right. Yet here is a man whose career spans multiple eras of the game, multiple generations of athletes, and even major geopolitical shifts in world history. He hasn't just survived the evolution of hockey. In many ways, he's bridged the gap between completely different epochs of the sport.
And that bridge is exactly what we're crossing today. We're going to examine his frankly absurd statistical records, his incredibly colorful off-ice persona, and the deep, surprising motivations that are actually forcing him to stay on the ice today.
Yeah, the reasons are heavier than you might think.
They really are. Okay, let's unpack this, starting from his origins. We have to talk about the kid from Kladno, Czechoslovakia, and the immense weight of history he brought with him when he was drafted 5th overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins. That was back in 1990.
To understand the true magnitude of that 1990 draft, you have to look at the world stage at that precise moment. Jágr was the first Czechoslovak player drafted by the National Hockey League who didn't have to defect to the West to play.
Wow, that's a massive detail.
It really is. His selection coincided with the fall of the Iron Curtain. For decades prior, Eastern European players had to undertake incredibly dangerous clandestine escapes just to join the NHL.
Sneaking across borders in the middle of the night.
Exactly. Jágr, however, was able to attend the draft in Vancouver with his government's full blessing. It was a monumental shift in how global talent entered the league.
That political reality didn't just stay in Europe, though. He brought it directly onto the ice with him, which is the entire reason behind that iconic number 68 on his back.
A lot of people just assume it's a random lucky number.
Right, but for anyone wondering, it wasn't just a random digit. It honors the 1968 Prague Spring, and specifically his grandfather, who died in prison opposing the post-war communist takeover and the forced collectivization of his family's farm.
Yeah.
He wore his family's history and a very specific political statement on his sweater every single night.
Framing that within his personal historical context is crucial here. He held a staunch anti-communist stance from a very young age, shaped entirely by what happened to his family. We found notes detailing how, as a youth, he actually kept a photograph of American President Ronald Reagan hidden in his school gradebook.
Really? Just tucked in there?
Just tucked in his school book.
Yeah.
As a quiet, personal form of protest against Soviet policies. It underscores just how deeply intertwined his early life was with the political realities of Eastern Europe before he ever laced up skates in North America.
You take a teenager carrying that kind of heavy generational legacy and you drop him straight into early 90s Pittsburgh. The culture shock must have been absolutely staggering.
Oh, without a doubt.
He barely had a grasp of the English language when he arrived, but he found some incredibly unique, honestly almost charming ways to adapt. He would play Scrabble to build his English vocabulary.
I love that detail.
And my absolute favorite part, he would practice his pronunciation by reading the daily weather forecast on a local Pittsburgh rock radio station, WDVE, and he'd do it in this incredibly thick accent.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition, isn't it? On one hand, he's the bearer of this heavy geopolitical family legacy, and on the other, he's just an 18-year-old kid trying to figure out how to fit into a completely foreign culture.
He definitely had that infectious teenager energy. He and his teammate, fellow countryman Gigi Hrdina, were quickly dubbed the Checkmates by the fans.
A classic early 90s nickname.
Right. And it didn't take long for the Pittsburgh faithful to realize that the letters in Jaromír could be scrambled into an anagram for Mario Jr.
Which was the ultimate compliment in Pittsburgh.
Exactly, given that Mario Lemieux was the absolute face of the franchise.
That organic connection to Lemieux perfectly sets up his initial era of peak dominance. Jágr stepped in as a phenomenal supporting player on a powerhouse team, helping them win back-to-back Stanley Cups in 1991 and 1992. He actually became one of the youngest players in NHL history to score a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Doing that at just 20 years old.
Yep. But he was never destined to stay in a supporting role.
Far from it. Once he found his footing, the league basically belonged to him. He secured 5 Art Ross trophies as the league's leading scorer, 4 of them consecutively, which is wild in the modern era. He also added a Hart Memorial Trophy as the league MVP in 1999. The sheer volume of points he was producing was staggering, even for the high-scoring era he played in.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look closely at his 1995 to 1996 season. He tallied 149 points.
Unbelievable numbers.
To this day, his totals for assists and points from that specific season stand as the all-time records for right-wingers in the NHL. And it wasn't just about his speed or his shot. What made his style of play so uniquely unstoppable was his legendary lower body strength.
He was like a tank on skates.
Exactly. He would use his massive frame to shield the puck along the boards, and defensemen literally couldn't move him off of it. He remains the most productive European-born player in NHL history, sitting second only to Wayne Gretzky in total career NHL points. In any discussion of the greatest to ever play the game, his statistical footprint is unavoidable.
It's the kind of peak performance that makes you assume the rest of his career was a smooth glide to the Hall of Fame. But no career spanning nearly 4 decades escapes turbulence. We hit the middle years and things get complicated.
Very complicated.
Mario Lemieux comes back from retirement in 2000 and suddenly there's friction. Pittsburgh was a medium market team and they simply couldn't afford Jágr's massive salary alongside Lemieux. So he gets traded to the Washington Capitals, signing what was then the largest contract in NHL history.
$77 million.
$77 million over 7 years.
An average annual value of $11 million back then was astronomical. But the fit in Washington was fundamentally flawed from the start. For the first time in his career, he failed to finish among the NHL's top scorers.
The system just wasn't right for him.
No, the Capitals struggled to succeed in the playoffs, and the coaching style just didn't suit his play. It quickly devolved into an era marked by unfulfilled expectations, friction with management, and a desperate desire by the organization to shed his massive salary.
Which triggers another trade, this time shipping him to the New York Rangers in 2004. At this point, a lot of analysts were writing him off. The Rangers had missed the playoffs for 7 straight seasons, they'd just cleared out their veteran talent, and expectations were on the floor. People thought his best days were far behind him.
They were very wrong.
Very wrong. Jágr seemingly took that personally. At age 34, he completely resurges. In the 2005-2006 season, he utterly shatters the Rangers' single-season franchise records with 54 goals and 123 points. It was an absolute revenge tour.
That resurgence is a masterclass in sheer talent and adaptability. It proved that his hockey IQ was just as vital as his physical strength. And it's precisely during this era that his global legacy was permanently cemented. When he captured World Championship gold in 2005, he officially entered the Triple Gold Club.
Stanley Cup, Olympic gold, World Championship.
Exactly. Having already won his Stanley Cups in the early 90s and an Olympic gold medal with the Czech Republic in Nagano in 1998, completing that trifecta put him in an incredibly elite, globally recognized echelon of the sport.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because you cannot talk about Jaromír Jágr without diving into his incredibly colorful off-ice persona.
Right.
The man is a mythic figure, and he has this almost Teflon quality when it comes to controversies that would have absolutely sunk other athletes. For instance, in 2003, he openly admitted he had to settle a $950,000 gambling debt with internet betting sites.
$1 million.
Yeah, most players would go into hiding over that. Then in 2015, an 18-year-old model tried to extort him for $2,000, threatening to post a picture of them in bed together online.
His response to that extortion attempt really highlights that Teflon quality you mentioned. Instead of panicking or paying her off to protect his image, he simply told her, "I don't care."
Just, I don't care.
The photo was subsequently published online, and the public reaction was almost non-existent in terms of outrage. If anything, it became a meme. People started posing for photos mimicking the picture. It had absolutely zero negative impact on his legacy or his public standing, which is rare for an athlete of his caliber.
It's almost like the pressure of carrying his hometown's expectations and his family's heavy political legacy made him completely immune to standard celebrity gossip. He just couldn't be bothered. But while he had these chaotic, highly publicized moments in the media, there were also periods of profound, quiet seriousness. In 2008, he makes the shocking decision to leave the NHL entirely.
Out of nowhere.
He signs a massive deal to play in the Continental Hockey League in Russia with Avangard Omsk.
And that 3-year detour in Russia was marked by an event that forever changed him. During a game, a 19-year-old player named Alexei Cherepanov, who was actually a first-round draft pick of the Rangers, and a highly touted prospect, collapsed on the bench directly next to Jágr.
Oh, man.
They had literally just finished their shift and were discussing the play. Tragically, Cherepanov passed away right then.
When you read about that moment, it's just incredibly sobering. You have to wonder how witnessing something that traumatic right next to you on the bench shifts your entire perspective on the game and on life in general.
It undeniably forced a profound shift. Facing that kind of sudden mortality on the ice deepened his introspection significantly. It was during this period in Russia, a historically Orthodox nation, that Jágr began speaking much more openly about his faith. He is an Orthodox Christian, having been baptized years earlier in 2001 in Prague. Following the tragedy, you really start to see the deeper philosophical layers of the man emerge from beneath the mullet and the scoring titles.
You definitely do. It adds a lot of weight to what came next. After 3 years away in Russia, almost everyone assumed his North American career was a closed chapter. He was pushing 40, but in 2011, at age 39, he comes back to the NHL.
A triumphant return.
And he doesn't just play a brief farewell tour. He embarks on this wild journeyman phase that becomes almost as famous as his prime years. He suits up for the Flyers, the Stars, the Bruins, the Devils, the Panthers, and the Flames.
What's fascinating here is how he adapted his game during this phase. He couldn't rely on the explosive speed of his 20s anymore, so he doubled down on his hockey sense, his positioning, and that legendary puck protection. His stint with the Boston Bruins is a perfect example of his enduring value. In 2013, he helped lead Boston to the Stanley Cup Finals.
That Bruins run is still mind-blowing. By making the finals in 2013, he set an NHL record for the longest gap between Stanley Cup Finals appearances for a single player. 21 years.
21 years between finals.
He hadn't been to the final since 1992 with Pittsburgh. He was literally battling along the boards, alongside teammates and against opponents who were still in diapers the last time he hoisted the cup. And his sheer longevity during this era spawned one of the absolute best fan bases in all of sports, the Traveling Jaggers.
A truly fantastic subculture. It was a dedicated group of fans from Alberta who would attend games wearing fake mullets and the authentic jerseys of his various teams, all 11 of them, including his international and all-star sweaters.
It's hilarious.
They followed him around North America, essentially turning his late career games into a traveling tribute to his endurance. It was a visual representation of how beloved he had become across the entire league, regardless of which jersey he was wearing.
The visual of a dozen guys in fake mullets aggressively cheering him on from the glass never gets old. But as fun as that era was, we have to move into the final act of this story, because this is where the sheer raw reality of what he is doing today really hits home.
Yes. If we jump forward to April 2024, at exactly 52 years and 63 days old, Jágr scored a goal in a professional game. With that specific goal, he officially broke Gordie Howe's long-standing record as the oldest player to ever score in a professional hockey competition.
Howe had set his record at 52 years and 6 days.
Correct. Surpassing Mr. Hockey in longevity is a milestone few thought would ever be touched.
So what does this all mean? Why on earth is he still lacing up his skates for the 2025-2026 season? He debuted for his hometown team Ratiti Kladno in October 2025 at age 53. You look at his resume and you'd think the guy has absolutely nothing left to prove. He has the records, he has the money, his legacy is ironclad. Why put your body through that at 53?
The why is deeply sobering, and it strips away the romanticism of playing forever. It is fundamentally a burden of love. He owns the Ratiti Kladno team. He took over the presidency from his father, who unfortunately passed away in 2022.
Right.
Jágr has been remarkably candid about his internal struggles regarding his continued play. Back in 2022, he openly admitted that he completely lacks the motivation for the physically demanding nature of the game at this stage of his life. He confessed that he essentially has to force himself to gear up and play.
He has to force himself. He doesn't even want to be out there.
Precisely. His biggest fear, which he has stated publicly, is that if he formally retires as a player, the team will lose its vital sponsors. And if they lose their sponsors, the franchise's very existence in his hometown is jeopardized. He is quite literally carrying an entire professional hockey organization on his 53-year-old back just to keep them financially afloat.
For you listening, I want you to think about your own career for a second. How often do you hit a wall and feel burnt out in your job? How often do you feel like you are too old for a career pivot, or that you just desperately want to rest and enjoy what you've built?
It's a universal feeling.
Now, imagine having to absorb brutal physical hits from 20-year-old professional athletes on a sheet of ice at age 53. And you aren't doing it because you're chasing glory or a championship, but because an entire community and the livelihoods of an entire organization rely entirely on your physical presence to survive. It completely reframes our everyday concepts of duty, of professional longevity, and of the absolute physical limits of the human body.
It is a profound shift from playing for passion to playing out of sheer, inescapable obligation. He has credited his physical strength and remarkable endurance to growing up on a farm and doing heavy year-round labor as a child. But even that deep well of resilience runs dry eventually. He is pushing the absolute boundaries of what is medically and psychologically sustainable for an athlete.
It's incredible and honestly a little heartbreaking. So just to recap the monumental scale of this man's life, he is second all-time in NHL points. He has a career spanning 38 professional seasons. This is a guy who started his career while the Iron Curtain was still dividing Europe and who is still taking punishing shifts along the boards in October 2025. It is truly a legacy that will never, ever be replicated in modern sports.
This raises an important question, and it's something closely tied to the autobiography he just published in October 2025, titled J68.
Right, the new book.
The book dives deeply into his life, his faith, and the true meaning of sport. But examining his current situation leaves you wondering, when you dedicate 38 years of your adult life to a single grueling physical routine, and you do it out of a profound sense of duty, does the sport eventually stop being a game entirely?
Does it just become your entire identity?
Exactly. Is Jaromír Jágr's inability to step away a beautiful, selfless testament to loyalty to his hometown? Or is it a tragic reflection of a man who simply might not know how to exist in the world without skates on his feet?
It's something for you to think about the next time you consider the true weight and purpose of your own life's work.
That is a fascinating way to look at it. We will leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Jaromír Jágr, and we'll catch you next time.